A former president in court as a criminal defendant is a never-before-seen moment. So we've come across the border to Buffalo, New York, to talk to Republicans about their feelings on Donald Trump and the future of their party. Hi, Joe. Thank you so much for coming. Thanks. We sat down with Joe Totaro, chairman of the Buffalo Republican Committee, and Nancy Orticelli, a Republican activist.
It's ridiculous. It's bogus.
It's nothing but a political witch hunt, and that's all that is to it.
Why not let the legal process play out before calling it a witch hunt and a stunt?
Because regardless of the outcome of the legal process, it's still a witch hunt and a stunt based on, like I said, the crime, the alleged crime. This is something you're choosing to prosecute. Donald Trump has nerves of steel, and he knows that they're trying to shut him up. And he's a person who will not be shut up.
From the outside looking in, it can be hard, I think, for people to understand why so many Republicans keep supporting Donald Trump. 4 years in office where there was controversy, there was scandal, there was division, there was outrage. And now we have this court case, so why this guy?
Honestly, he's done a lot of good for this country. He ran this country like a business, the way it should be.
People, they love Donald Trump and they want to protect him. And I think in the primaries, I think it's going to be better for him.
Trump's polling has surged since news of the indictment broke, putting him far ahead of his closest possible rival, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, also expected to enter the race for Republican nominee.
If you look at Donald Trump, since this indictment came out, the news about it, he's raised over $7 million already. The people are behind him.
There's a difference between what is good in a Republican primary versus what is good in a general election for your party. And the last two elections haven't gone all that well for your party. Why do you think nationally you could win in 2024 with Donald Trump when that didn't happen in 2020 and the 2022 midterms didn't work out so well for the Republicans?
I'm going to say something that's probably going to get me labeled as an extremist, but I actually believe the 2020 election was stolen.
I mean, Bill Barr and Chris Wray, both Trump appointees, both said there was no evidence of widespread voter fraud.
It's a conspiracy theorist kind of viewpoint. I get it, but I don't trust the government. I don't trust a lot of things that they tell us.
Let's go back to the primary. 2020, Donald Trump did not win the election. A lot of, so-called MAGA Republicans don't win. Why do you think that sticking on the Trump train is good when it comes to 2024?
Who else do we think could beat Joe Biden at this point? I don't think a moderate could beat Joe Biden at this point. I think the people are looking for somebody to take the reins again and be the voice of the people, not the voice of the political party.
I've been a supporter for Donald Trump since he first ran. I thought he did a very good job as president.
So nothing bothered you?
Nothing.
There are other politicians who have the same beliefs on the Republican side as Donald Trump, who's now been arraigned, a former president, as a criminal defendant. Is there anyone else at this moment who might sway you off?
The only one that could ever sway me is DeSantis. If he should enter the race, maybe. But we'll have to see what Donald Trump does.
Ideally, among Republicans and conservatives, the goal actually was Donald Trump again and then Ron DeSantis after Donald Trump. And I think people would be absolutely happy with that.
What if he's found guilty?
It's nothing but sheer politics. That's the way I really and truly feel.
I'm anxious to see what's going to happen. I don't think Donald Trump is going to come out of this scathed very much. I think he's going to come out on top.
All right, well, thank you so much for your time. The next year, 2 years leading to 2024 is going to be very interesting.
Never a dull moment.
No, there won't be a dull moment.
So Philip Bump is a national columnist from the Washington Post. So Philip, you just heard those Trump supporters in Buffalo. They seem unfazed, Trump maintains, too, there's been this surge in fundraising after the indictment. We know the polling data out of the U.S. since last week suggests a bump for him, too, a dip for DeSantis. Is that the novelty of the moment or a pattern you think will repeat?
Well, it's important to remember that the trend has been away from DeSantis and towards Trump, in part because Trump started attacking Ron DeSantis, and DeSantis hasn't really fought back. I think what we heard there is a standard articulation of why people like Donald Trump. It is that Donald Trump they see as oppositional to the government and as oppositional to their enemies. That's what defines Trump. And that's why he gets away with situations like this, where they just assume it's a witch hunt because he has defined himself as being against these people, and therefore those people are pushing back, and those people are the common enemy of both Trump and his supporters, and so they stand with him in situations like this. It's been the same pattern we've seen for the past 8 years.
So, Philip, when the former president spoke tonight, a lot of it seemed incredibly familiar, but did anything jump out at you?
What really jumped out at me was the extent to which he uses these shorthands that are very, very familiar to consumers of conservative media, people who watch Fox News all the time, journalists who have to pay attention to this for their jobs. There are very shorthands he uses to describe the ways in which he feels he's been maligned that resonate very much with his existing base of support and with Republicans. But I was sitting next to my wife. She had no idea what he was talking about. And that's fundamentally the challenge. That's why I think this positions him decently for the primaries, but very poorly for the general election.
Okay, that's interesting. The indictment that came out today, I think a lot of people thought maybe there might be more details in it, that you know, lots of charges, but not a lot of information. In that document, though, was there something you did not expect?
I don't know if there's anything I didn't expect. There were certainly some surprising revelations. We got more detail, for example, about the ways in which Donald Trump allegedly was aware of the fact that he was trying to influence the election. This is a key issue. Was he making these hush money payments to try and change the scope of the election? And there were details suggested in these documents that he, for example, was the one that pushed for Stormy Daniels not to be paid, hoping that maybe they could just wait out the election and not have to pay her at all. There were aspects like that which really speak to Trump's state of mind at that point in time, which is important if you're thinking that there was a crime being committed in those hush money payments, since the only crime would be if they were meant to influence the election.
So just one last thought here. This is one case. We continue to hear references to others that are coming or potentially coming. Can you give us a sense of what specifically we will be hearing about in the next year and the seriousness of those potential cases?
Yeah, I think there are probably four things. One is the state of New York has been conducting an investigation. It's not really clear what the status of that is. Down in Fulton County, Georgia, near Atlanta, there's been an investigation into Trump's effort to overturn the 2020 election. That seems as though there's an indictment that is looming, that is likely over the short term. And then there's a federal investigation, a two-pronged federal investigation. The first looking at Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election, which is sort of vague, and we're not sure what the status of that is. But then there's this investigation related to the classified documents he had at Mar-a-Lago, which seems much further along and much more concrete in terms of what it's targeting. I think we can probably hear about something about that fairly shortly as well.
Wow, it's all a bit dizzying. I have a feeling we'll be having these conversations a lot in the next year or so. Philip Bump, national columnist for the Washington Post. Thank you.
Thanks.